Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is James Bale, and I am the Head of Marketing here at Contact Cybersecurity. Now, of course, the end of a year presents the opportunity to reflect back and refresh as we go into 2023. And this is never more useful than in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. So over the next 30 minutes, we're going to look at the latest cyber threat trends and offer you some practical advice on how you and your business should look to tackle them. Our adversary does not sit still, of course. Hackers are becoming ever more sophisticated and adept at maneuvering around more traditional threat defenses. So we, of course, need to adapt too, or face the undesirable consequences. So to deliver today's food for thought and to help you and your business get fully cyber secure heading into the new year, I am delighted to have with me Contact's Chief Security Officer, Joe Burtnick. Now, Joe has a very wide breadth of experience in a range of cyber leadership roles, including being head of data center security at Symantec over in the States. Well, hello, Joe. How are you today?
Doing well, James. Thanks for having me, and welcome, everyone.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'll hand over to you, Joe. Really looking forward to this.
Well, thanks, James. You know, as we try to do a bit of a retrospective, or more importantly, kind of a forward look into 2023, one of the things that typically happens during these is we discuss a lot of doom and gloom of what the threat landscape looks like, and of course that continues to evolve. But I'm really optimistic about some of the changes I've seen in the tools and capabilities that organizations can deploy. And I think coming out of COVID and all of the digital transformation that we experienced, I think we may be reaching a tipping point. And I'm excited to look at some of the trends that we're seeing. Now, of course, the trends all have to be in context of the day job, project backlog, innovation, managing attack surfaces, security hygiene. And we are seeing much better improvement across organizations as they, implement the basic blocking and tackling associated with really making sure that they're getting more out of their current solutions, being able to adapt to the organizational change of the last few years. But of course, as organizations have evolved, as we've rapidly evolved our digital footprint relative to COVID, the number of threat surfaces that our teams have to deal with continues to grow. And because of the approach many organizations are taking, especially where each one of these requires a bit of specialist capability, we see that as they're trying to secure cloud workloads or cloud applications, IoT devices, each one of these becomes, if you will, a bit of a silo unto itself. And unfortunately, that creates and to some extent perpetuates some of the challenges our organizations have in addressing so many different threat surfaces. And we create, if you will, a great deal of fatigue as organizations look to identify a particular threat surface, put the necessary controls in place, bring on, in many cases, additional specialist talent. But one of the biggest risks with this ever-changing or ever-growing list of threat surfaces is organizations often get tunnel vision, where they focus on one particular threat surface because it is foundational to maybe an organizational change, maybe a migration, but all of those, unfortunately, are only one of many. And so being able to really see the breadth of what they have to defend against and how to look at that more holistically is always a real challenge. Of course, in the last few years, one of the biggest areas of increase has been in supply chain attacks. And it's because, let's call it what it is, supply chains are high value targets. The ability to compromise one entity and to have downstream impact across multiple entities is very attractive for attackers, especially as they monetize this. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that not only do we have technology challenges with our supply chain, but our approach to managing our supply chain has been one where we've had a lot of faith, hope, and trust around our vendors, their relationships, the level of access they have, the number of organizations we'll conduct security audits of and discover a number of privileged accounts associated with particular applications that are fairly excessive in the kind of rights that they have but it's what was configured, and we never went back and changed those things. And it's that lack of visibility and the ability to verify how our data is exchanging with suppliers, how our organizations consuming their technology or using their services, that really creates the big risk area for the supply chain. And it goes to show you what happens with especially one particular area, and how those business relationships, or that assumption of trust, if you will, can really lead into some very critical attacks. But of course, fundamentally, attackers are becoming more effective. We are in an AI arms race with attackers, where their ability to very quickly monetize attacks, specialize their skills, work as a collective, and develop tools such as software as a service applications for hackers to do ransomware as a service. All of these things are enabling organizations or attackers to get into organizations, and once they have a foothold, they're able to move laterally and infect other systems. And it's that ability to gain a foothold and break out or pivot or laterally infect other systems that really is where an attack goes from something minor to something being very severe. And what we've seen over the last few years is the time to break out, the time to go beyond a single system and now start moving and infecting other areas of the infrastructure has continued to decline. And as we look into 2023, the first bit of trend or insight that I think we should really capitalize on is, first, that the time to break out is an amazing metric to really measure the effectiveness of our teams. Defending against every single attack, being able to block every attack before it gets a foothold, we know really doesn't fall into how attackers can compromise an organization. But your ability to detect, respond, contain that attack within 42 minutes is a goal that I think is not only one that is really critical, but one that might be achievable with the kind of changes we've seen in the infrastructure. And that's one of the biggest optimistic areas I see for 2023, and why I think it can be a tipping point year, is because while the threat landscape, the attacker, has continued to evolve predictably as expected, our ability to deliver better security to our businesses has also rapidly evolved. And it's because of the investments that we made into remote working and cloud services that now we have technologies that are far better integrated than they were before. Security specialist teams would have their SIM tools, their SOAR tools, their data enrichment tools, their automation platforms, their integration pieces, solutions on top of each other to be able to really effectively do their job well. Now those solutions are coming far more integrated out of the box, and so their day one experience is far more effective as defenders. They're buoyed by huge amounts of capability in data enrichment, analysis powered by AI, and really the ability to defend at speed and defend at attack speed so that you can contain within that 42-minute time frame is really starting to become very achievable for organizations, where in the past you would not only have security specialists pivoting from screen to screen, that's been dramatically reduced, but most importantly, the interaction between the security team and the operations team has also been improved. And it's because security and its capabilities and insights are now being woven much more into the platform, where we have a centralized identity-based, policy-driven approach. And while we do have very specialist teams in security and operations, we now have common tool sets across them. And we'll explore this a little bit more, but it really is reducing the swivel chair time, the ticket tennis ball bouncing back and forth between groups time, and ultimately the time it takes us to contain that breakout and to stop an attack before it becomes much more profound. And this evolution of security, not only in the tool sets we as security specialists use, as IT operators use, but also across the tools that are available and the ways that we can implement this across our organization, we now can really implement a zero trust approach to security that doesn't have the kind of end user impacts and organizational friction that it's had in the past. Things like multi-factor authentication are easily deployable, and the end user impact is very manageable. And so we have the ability to achieve that very first zero trust principle of verify explicitly, verifying everyone's access at the time. And by doing that in a way that's really manageable for the end user, we're able to achieve better outcomes. Of course, with zero trust, you always want to assume a breach, focus on the ability to respond, and really that ability to contain a breakout and be able to respond to a breakout within 42 minutes gives us an opportunity to really deliver on that assume breach methodology to look across the entire organization. And of course, limiting access is fundamental, as we now can enable just-in-time access for administrators, users, third-party supply chain actors, et cetera, all able to do what they need when they need it without walking around with keys to the kingdom. Now, the organization and this ability to do rapid evolution is kind of the second insight, but really the impact for this operationally occurs when you can see the benefits that occur for the IT specialist team and the security specialist team. While before IT specialists would make changes to the infrastructure, implement new, onboarding of users, whatever that might be, they really didn't have the security insights to know what changes might be eroding the security posture of the organization, if they might be creating exceptions around policies that you don't want to have. And so now the IT specialists who are implementing different aspects of security controls, IT operational success, now has insights into the security impact of those operations. Before they undo a security control that could have profound impact, they're alerted to that. They get advisory content. And most importantly, the ability to implement IT operations through policy securely becomes much more available, especially as you look at their interaction as well across multiple areas of our infrastructure. The ability to deliver from the cloud identity allows us to have the capability to really start to secure our organization, applying that to cloud workloads, cloud applications, IoT, legacy apps, and data allows us to take this policy-based approach and really start to implement controls that are far more effective. And ultimately what it means is that we're able to operate more effectively as an IT organization and deliver our services more securely out of the box with it baked in or woven in. But for the security specialists, now they have the ability to not just triage, analyze, send a ticket over to the operations team to resolve something. Now the level of automation and response allows them to automate containment, automate response, reduce that ticket fatigue, and really defend at speed. Imagine a scenario where instead of somebody in the operations team receiving an email from the SOC that says, we see some suspicious activity with a particular user, we recommend that we image their machine, quarantine, contain, etc., and then somebody getting to it in operations. Unfortunately, it's 12 hours later and that breach has now been able to break out. With the security-enabled operations that we have at our fingertips, we now, instead of getting a ticket from the SOC, you get a privileged access request for the SOC to automatically contain the user so the ops team can make sure that everything's safe and secure and the user's able to either operate with their desktop versus a web portal, or more importantly, able to continue to operate successfully. So all of those really become great insights and capabilities for the upcoming year. And I think that's the big secret with a lot of this technology. It's not that there's a panacea, a silver bullet, if you will. It's really that these technologies have now gotten to be operationally deployable to the point that we can actually take advantage of them in a reasonable period of time without piles and piles of configuration and setup. And we also see impacts across the rest of the organization, especially for the end user community. Often we think about security awareness as annual training and phishing emails. But in the research leading up to this conversation, I really dug into some of the impacts MFA was having in organizations and where they did not change any of their security training, their phishing and end user awareness processes, but they implemented MFA and made it more prevalent for conditional access for mobile devices, remote working, etc. They saw a 30 to 50% decline in the number of phishing emails, bad user behavior, if you will, around all the things that we want to achieve, because like when we sit on an airplane and we have our safety briefing with the seat back pocket in front of us with the safety card, having MFA creates a level of security awareness that enables users to remember, maybe I shouldn't click on that email, maybe I shouldn't download that link, maybe I shouldn't do those things that are risky behaviors. It also means that our user community is much more open to managed access control, just-in-time access, because fundamentally security is now able to deliver a better user experience and be far more impactful to the organization, or impactful in a negative way to the user community. But the last group that's really been able to take advantage of some of this capability are security or leaders with the insights around current security posture, how to intelligently mitigate risks, and really driving some of these better security outcomes, such as speed of defense, security first culture, implementing zero trust, and really taking down the boundaries around our protection by having a cloud first approach that enables you to secure your supply chain vendors, secure your remote workers, deal with the disparate infrastructure as the boundaries that we traditionally use for security have dissolved, and we now need to be able to secure everything from the cloud effectively. And what we've seen for a lot of organizations, they're able to really start to do that at lower cost, because by reducing vendor complexity, reducing those silos, they're able to operate more effectively. And so it's been a really interesting year. I'm looking forward to 2023 and looking forward to seeing how much of this technology capability organizations can use to really put them on the front foot. So exciting year ahead, and looking forward to see what organizations are able to accomplish.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. That was great. Yeah, so for me, there's some really eye-opening points there, and I think I'm sure some pretty immediate actions, I think, are probably forming in all of our minds right now to address some of those trends that you covered there. Okay, so yeah, I've seen that a few questions have come in for us, so I'm going to put those to you now, Joe, if I may.
Of course.
That's always a good one. Joe, we're going to pin you down here, right? We've been through some great stuff today, but I'm going to pin you down to just one thing. If there's just one thing that we should be focusing on here, what would it be? What would be your advice on that one thing?
The first thing I would make sure is really look at how you use authentication. MFA is a tool that not only is really core to zero trust, it's really core to improving user behavior, and it's really core to making sure that you're able to verify identities. So definitely start with MFA. Now, let me probably ask the follow-on question, or answer the following question. What if I already have MFA? Because a lot of organizations have adopted that holistically. We are one of those. And I think if you've already looked at MFA, which can be a fairly low cost, high value impact to your security, the next thing is to look at how you can defend at speed. So that's first and foremost, having security monitoring response capabilities that are able to operate all the time, 24/7, if you will. But more importantly, how do you take and remove those silos between the operations and the security team? Remove the boundaries where, because somebody had to physically click on a particular screen, we really had to implement stops in the process. If you can streamline your ability to defend at speed, I would say following MFA, that's definitely number 2 on my list as well.
Perfect, thanks. And yeah, you've beautifully preempted what my second question was going to be about. If we have MFA in place, what's next? So thank you, you've covered that already. Okay, I think we've probably got time for one more question. So this one is about cost. Obviously, you've talked about lowering security cost. I'm sure a lot of us have that on our mind, particularly these days. How are businesses going about that? I mean, what would you say are the most effective ways for our audience here today to go about lowering their cybersecurity costs?
Well, it all depends on the organization, of course. And my first focus is really, how do we deliver more with less? And so, this isn't a matter of trying to cut back what we think we may be able to get away from, because the threat landscape's evolving. It's about how to reduce that operational silos between different groups and different technologies. One tool for the security team, one tool for the ops team that never really share information or work well together, to reducing the number of vendors and silos that exist in the organization. Very often, security teams are looking at a particular part of security. Maybe it's cloud workloads, cloud applications, but security impacts a lot of different aspects of the organization. So what we've seen are customers looking at how to consolidate security stack with their endpoints and their end users, integrating security into their whole remote working experience that allows them to be able to deploy and take advantage of other security in other parts of the organization, or of course streamlining. In many cases, we'll see organizations with multiple layers of redundant security that's driven by multiple vendors. And while in the past, having two different vendors doing the exact same thing might have been advantageous, the technology's advanced to the point that it's about bringing in those different technologies and layering them effectively together to defend without necessarily creating additional redundancy that's unnecessary, which of course leads to additional cost that's unnecessary.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you, Joe. Okay, look, well, we're coming to the end now, so you can see Joe's contact details on the screen. Do feel free to make a note of them. He'd be very happy to take questions from you directly. We've not got through every question that was asked today in the interest of time. We will send, however, this out to you in terms of an on-demand link, so you can watch this webinar again at your leisure if there's anything you wanted to recap on. And also do share it with your colleagues as well if you think it would be interesting for any of the guys you work with. Our team will follow up with you just to make sure you've got all the information you need. We've got lots of other information along these lines that we can share with you, so do look out for that. And then really that's about it. So I think all that's left for me to do is to wish you a great rest of your day and a very Merry Christmas. So thank you very much.